The film opens with a sweet portrayal of the life of a small family that seems so harmonious. Craig, the father, works as a doctor, while his wife, Elise, works as a real estate agent. Because of their different work schedules, this couple has to take turns taking care of their only son, 6-year-old Benjamin, who becomes the center of happiness in this small family. That morning, it was Craig's turn to look after Benjamin because Elise had to leave for work. After his wife left, Craig invited his son to play ball in the yard. However, when the sun grew hotter, Craig decided to step into the house for a moment to get some sunscreen. Without his knowledge, a car that had been parked not far from the yard quietly began to approach. Behind the wheel was a man who had been watching Benjamin with bad intentions. Craig, busy rummaging through Elise's cosmetic drawer in search of lotion, never expected that in just seconds his life would change. When he returned, he found Benjamin gone, taken away. Panicked, Craig immediately jumped into his car to chase, but the kidnapper's speed overwhelmed him. The situation got worse when he tried to call the police, only to realize that he had left his phone at home. His only option was to keep chasing in hopes of finding the car. Unfortunately, on an overpass, the kidnapper's car disappeared from sight. Craig even recklessly stopped other cars to borrow a phone, causing chaos on the road.
Stop! Stop! I need a phone! Give me a fucking phone! Please! Give me a fucking phone!
No, just here! 911, what's your emergency?
Someone's kidnapped my son!
Meanwhile, Elise, who had come home from work, found her house filled with police and journalists. Shocked, she rushed inside. There she saw Craig with a panicked face, but he was speechless. A detective asked her to sit down to explain that her son had been kidnapped. Instead of calming down, Elise became hysterical, screaming and demanding to know where her child was. Hour after hour passed with no news. The police had yet to find any clues, let alone the motive behind the abduction. Elise began to wonder why there had been no ransom demand. She suspected that this kidnapping was not about money, but the work of a psychopath who simply enjoyed the suffering of others.
It's for a child to be abducted and their parents claim whether he could be recognized points away from kidnapping.
What does that mean?
Psychopath.
Elise, honey, we've got to let them do their jobs.
No! Sitting here all day while they're trying to do their job, and you just stand here. We're not doing anything. Son, their fucking job is to find My little boy's name is Benjamin Michael Landry. Whoever has my little boy, please don't hurt him. Please.
Her suspicion was correct. Benjamin, now locked in a basement, cried in fear, calling out for his parents. His screams angered the kidnapper, John Kozlowski. This deranged man almost killed Benjamin simply because he was disturbed by the crying.
You're in real trouble.
Stop, don't come near me!
This is a messy room. I'm telling you, I am very, very angry.
Not long after, 2 police officers, Patterson and Alvarez, arrived after receiving reports from residents who heard crying from John's house. When the door opened, John tried to cover it up, claiming he was depressed and that the crying was his own. Alvarez grew more suspicious when he saw children's clothing in the house, though John claimed he lived alone. When they asked to come inside, John refused and demanded a warrant. Even so, the 2 officers eventually forced their way in to check the house.
Have a nice day.
Give me your hands! Got him! Call for backup! Get off me!
Back up to 321 Spruce.
I didn't do anything! Get out of my house!
They examined room after room until Patterson found access to the basement. At first, all he saw were old, dirty, dusty pieces of furniture. But his instincts told him something was wrong. His suspicion was confirmed when he found bloodstains, along with tools like screwdrivers, drills, and hammers covered in blood. And when another door was opened, he froze because inside lay Benjamin's lifeless body. The terrible news soon reached Elise through a phone call. Her body immediately went weak upon hearing that her son was found dead. Although she still hoped it was not Benjamin, the reality at the hospital hit hard. The boy lying stiff was indeed their son. A once happy life was shattered in just a matter of hours. Craig and Elise, devastated, sought justice. They wanted John punished as harshly as possible. But their hopes were crushed when the judge sentenced him to only 25 years in prison.
Court is now in session.
John Kozlowski. 2 counts, murder in the first degree. 2 counts, kidnapping.
Client pleads not guilty.
What is the maximum sentence Kozlowski can get?
Life without parole. Well, the jury could recommend 25 years.
My son was 6 years old. Do your job! How is killing a helpless child ever warranted? And make sure this piece of shit gets put away for life!
For them, the sentence did not match the suffering caused. Elise exploded with emotion, urging Craig to get a weapon and kill John. Craig refused, realizing that revenge would not bring Benjamin back. But Elise insisted. As parents, they had failed, and at the very least, they had to do something for the dignity of their son. The days that followed grew darker. They sank deeper into depression and began blaming each other, arguing endlessly. Until finally, Elise chose to leave Craig to find peace, leaving her husband broken and desperate. After his wife's departure, Craig seemed hopeless, believing that there was no future or hope that could bring their family together again. Eventually, he decided to end his life by injecting something into his arm. But when he saw Benjamin's photo right in front of him, he felt a whisper that strengthened his faith and stopped him from taking such reckless action. This brought him back to memories of when the 3 of them were still together, reminding him how happy their small family had been living with their beloved son. After that, something arose in Craig's mind as a way to express his disappointment, which now had turned him into an angry man. A whisper stirred again in his heart and soul, igniting his desire for revenge. At this point, he went to his wife to persuade her to join him in avenging the death of their son. At first, Craig and Elise began their plan by going to the hospital where Craig worked. Craig got out of the car and walked past the medical staff. He then found an ambulance with its door unlocked. Once inside, Craig took some drugs and put them in a small bag. The next day at a prison, John Kozlowski was about to be transferred to a facility with stricter security. Craig and Elise, on the other hand, secretly tailed John, who was being escorted by police, following the vehicle to carry out their plan. On the way to the new prison, the transport vehicle stopped at a gas station, where one of the police officers went inside to buy coffee. Elise got out of her car and went into the store, continuing their plan. Craig then followed Elise and created a scene at the cashier to draw everyone's attention.
Hey, where's my change?
What change? Give me no change!
Give me my money! You're right, sorry. Did you do it?
Done.
Should kick in about a half.
The journey resumed, and they continued following the transport vehicle while waiting for the drugs to take effect. Craig, being a doctor, was confident that the police officers who drank the coffee would suffer side effects. Their plan worked, because within 30 minutes the vehicle stopped in the middle of the road. The police quickly got out, clutching their stomachs in pain. Craig swiftly entered the vehicle and drove off with the prisoner, while Elise followed behind in the car. Near the edge of forest, Craig, speeding, accidentally hit a deer crossing the road. Luckily, Craig only suffered minor facial injuries from the accident. They then saw a bloodied prisoner lying on the ground. They went to check on John Kozlowski and found him unconscious from the crash.
He's alive.
Thank God.
They quickly brought John to a farmhouse far from the city where they lived. At first, they placed John on a table, still handcuffed at the hands and feet. John regained consciousness, and Craig told him that he would be given medication. This revealed that the drugs Craig had taken from the ambulance were part of his main plan. It was very likely they would begin torturing John and would not let him die, keeping him alive for weeks with the drugs.
You're gonna feel everything.
We will just keep hurting you. From now until the moment you die, you sealed your fate. Don't try to talk.
The next morning, while cleaning the car of bloodstains, Elise suddenly received a call from Detective Berger. The detective informed her that the transport vehicle carrying John had just been in an accident, and John had escaped. Hearing this, Elise pretended to be shocked by the information, though they were in fact behind it. The detective also expressed regret over the officer's negligence. That night, Craig's mind was haunted by the loss of his son, with memories of Benjamin constantly flooding back. As a result, the grief pushed Craig to vent his anger again by going to John and pressing a lit cigarette onto his stomach, causing excruciating pain. The torture continued the next morning, with Craig soldering the burn mark on John's stomach.
Okay.
At this point, Elise, hearing John's screams, began to feel uneasy about what they were doing. But Craig tried to persuade her, saying that what they were doing still did not match what John had done to their son. Unsatisfied, Craig continued by injecting something into John's neck. The drug would cause muscle cramps, but not ordinary cramps, rather spasms that affected his entire body. The following morning, as they were torturing John in the basement again, they were startled by footsteps on the floor above them. A man and his dog had entered the house. He turned out to be a local resident. Suspicious of Elise's presence, the man told her that the house belonged to someone named Frank Joseph. Elise, being a real estate agent, skillfully controlled the situation by claiming the house was in the process of being sold, and she was the agent waiting for a client. Fortunately, the man believed her when Craig pretended to be the buyer and soon left. Meanwhile, Detective Berger received information from another officer that the transport vehicle had been found. The detective rushed to the crash site to investigate. Craig and Elise, back in the basement with John, were shocked when John claimed he remembered nothing except the crash. He even said he could not recall who he was, perhaps due to a head injury in the accident. Elise tried not to believe him, yet they began to feel guilty for torturing a man who did not know why he was being hurt. Still, Elise was unwilling to let him go, convinced he was lying. They then tried another way by injuring John's leg and forcing him to say their son's name. That night, Elise awoke and went to the bathroom. Meanwhile, in the basement, John, still handcuffed, struggled to free himself. With effort, he finally broke free, slipping out of the restraints on his hands and feet. He then went upstairs to escape, but Elise, sitting in the bathroom, was startled by the sound of the bedroom door slowly opening. She panicked in fear, but all she could do was look at her husband, still asleep. At that moment, she had no choice but to try to attack the man from the bathroom. Elise moved slowly, holding an iron pipe in her hand, and struck John until he fainted. Craig woke up, startled, and together they dragged the man back to the basement. Unfortunately, the man suddenly regained consciousness and fought back, kicking Craig down the stairs. But he did not attack Elise and instead fled the house. Elsewhere, the police were searching the area. Luckily for them, they eventually found and captured John as he tried to escape. At this point, everything was revealed, and indeed the man arrested was John Kozlowski, sentenced to 25 years for killing child. However, the main point was that inside the transport vehicle they had hijacked, there had also been another prisoner named Patrick Allegan, sentenced to 18 months for tax evasion and fraud. It turned out this was the man who had spent his days with Craig and Elise in that house. Craig and Elise were shocked to find that the man they had been tormenting had hanged himself. leaving behind a note. The man, revealed to be Patrick Galligan, admitted that he knew he was hated and expressed his regret. He said he deserved what they had done to him, but he could no longer endure the torture, so he chose to end his life. Craig and Elise were devastated to learn that they had failed in their revenge, because the man they had tortured all along was not John Kozlowski, the killer of their son, but Patrick Galligan. Thus the film ends.